welcome back to another week on PowHER Live. If you're joining us for the first time, my name is Brittany Cantor-Barb. I am the CEO of PowHER. We're an executive coaching and consulting firm where we help badass corporate women in business build unshakable confidence, dominate in that boardroom, and finally close their own gender pay gap. And each week I bring in just another powerful woman that is out there helping us do just that, helping us all collectively succeed together. And this week is no different. I am so excited to introduce everyone to Alesia. Alesia, welcome in.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Oh, well, everyone, Alicia's showing me a lot of grace. I was very, very late today. You would think at this point I could manage my schedule like most of us, but we roll with it. So, Alesia, thank you again. Tell everybody about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so Alesia Galanti here, and I run Galanti Media, which is a full service podcast management agency. And so, really, our whole purpose is bringing messages that matter. And that's like the core of really empowering people, particularly women, tend to be a lot of our clients who are looking to get their message out there via podcasting and doing that really authentically and making sure that the content that's going out is in alignment with their values and all of that fun stuff.
Oh, Alesia, whenever we first met, obviously I was fortunate enough to come guest on your, podcast and what you're doing. And then, of course, we're going to be reusing this today on podcasting. But if you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be podcasting, I would have probably had a heart attack. How many people come to you? They really want to do this, especially women, and they're like, what the hell am I supposed to talk about? Or I can't do that. My story's not valuable enough, or my message isn't, worthy enough. How many people really struggle with that?
So many of our clients struggle with that. I could not even tell you. And that's why a lot of the stuff I do tends to be around mindset and like hand holding and all of that stuff. But a lot of it comes down to, am I going to be even saying anything different? Right? Like that's a real fear that people have, especially as women, because we're like, oh, well, somebody's already doing it. There's no room for me. There's always room for you. Always room for you. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I'm not enough of an expert. You probably are to speak on this topic for months or years, or you think podcasting, you think years of showing up every week, every other week for an audience to hear your story or to hear the message that you're passionate about. And it can feel like, well, I don't know that I could talk about it that much, or I don't know that someone's even going to listen. Like, who's going to listen to me? I don't even like the sound of my own voice, right? Like, all of those fears do show up, or they're feeling like, well, I've been wanting to do this for years, and friends have been telling me this is such a great idea, and I want to do it, and I want to do it, but I don't even know where to start. And so that fear has been holding me back. So those are the three things that people tend to come to us with, of like, podcasting is terrifying.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Alicia, I think that you just, totally just letting everybody know that you're not alone. Like, 9 out of 10 of us at least, right? You have no clue what you're doing, but there's some kind of pull, right? There's something that keeps coming back that keeps saying, yes, I should do this. When it comes to specifically a lot of your clients that work in corporate, tell me a little bit about how you've helped those women, or not even corporate, women in general, overcome that mindset, because that is so many different things that you and I know. That's
Yes.
saying you're not good enough, you can't do it.
Yes. And there's a lot of internal fears, right? So what we tend to do is we do that research for the clients. Like, what is the market research? Who's talking about this in the industry? And then really presenting it in a way where, like, you don't have to specifically go out and look at these people or see what they're doing. We'll write it all out for you. And then expressing very clearly how your story can be different, how you can show up differently. So if you're someone who's like, well, maybe I want to talk about this. Maybe I want to have a podcast. Maybe I want to have a live show. Maybe I want to go to more speaking events, whatever it is, to like show up, right, as yourself. You have to really think about, okay, just because someone else is doing something doesn't mean that how I approach it is going to be exactly the same. And even if it's close to the same, what your takeaway is going to be completely different, right? So like there's this story that I like to share whenever I think about just my own journey in self development. It's having come from a family where my mother was an addict and being the oldest of five kids. Like there's a lot of like changes that I've made in my life because of the way I grew up. And so there's a story of these two sons. We could do use daughters because, you know, women are awesome. Two women grow up and they watch their mom drink, right? And they, you know, one grew up, became a drunk, the other one grew up, never touched it. And when they were asked, well, why did you do that? Or why did you not drink? Well, I watched my mother. Well, why did you drink? I watched my mother. So they grew up in the exact same household, correlating to what I'm talking about. You may have gone through the exact same thing, but the outcomes are completely different. The takeaways are different. And just because, and we saw this with a client who was talking in the like building WordPress websites, which is very male dominated topic, right? Like tech, just very male dominated, where they were the only women talking about this topic, the only women in the industry. And so it didn't matter that they had very similar experiences to their male counterparts. The women who were listening to them came to them because they talked about what it was like as a woman in the industry. They talked about those struggles because, yes, they might have the same experiences, but it really came down to what the takeaway was. And so their audience was drawn to them a lot deeper, a lot further because they were women talking at a women level.
Alicia, so many good nuggets in there that I know that you and I could go down so many different rabbit holes with. But you bring up something that I think the world in general is starving for, that is vulnerability and authenticity.
Yeah.
So, in that specific situation, what you just said probably hit so many people listening today, right? Because we know that all of these struggles, like 9 out of 10 of us have that, if not something in addition to that, and the ability to hear someone else say, here's what I've struggled with. Here's how I would go sit in my car and scream to the top of my lungs. Or here's how I thought, like, I'm just done. I'm not moving forward. I'm not alone. When your clients see, like, damn, that's the impact I can have in this world. Tell me about that, like, aha moment, like when you finally take the leap, you start putting stuff out there, your voice, no matter how it is, right, in some way, shape, or form, and your personal brand, and you get that aha moment when you're like, this is why it was worth walking through that fear.
Yeah, so we had a client recently hit over 200 episodes, which is huge. Like most people, 90% of podcasters do not make it past 25 episodes. So for her to hit 200 was like huge celebration. And she had also recently hit 100,000 downloads. And so I was like, that's so incredible. Wow, great. And she was like, well, my other friend, she just hit 1 million and like she's in a similar industry. I was like, okay, so have you had any conversations with anyone who's been impacted by your show? She's like, yeah, so and so said that they listened to my show, they recommended it to their mom. Now their mom is quoting me to them, and like going on and on about these experiences and these connections that she's having where people are like, you are making such a difference in my life. And I thought about this differently because you were in my head while I was going through it. And I was like, oh, what would Barb do here? Yeah, that's what Barb would do. That makes sense. I should do that differently. Like really making a difference in people's everyday lives. And so, we were going back and forth about this stuff. And I finally said, then why do the downloads matter? Who cares? Like those arbitrary numbers where it's like, oh, I only got this many clicks on my post, or I only got, when you want to show up and share your story, it's not about those things. It's about the people, and even the people that you may never even encounter or talk to, who are actually changing their lives because of something that you're doing, because of something that you said, because of that vulnerability. And bringing back that like podcasting, right? Or the audio experience, there's something magical about listening while you're doing your everyday tasks, right? you're able to really feel like, oh man, I feel like I know them. I feel like I connect with them on a deeper level. And it removes a lot of that bias that we see, especially as women and especially as a woman of color, like from different mediums, like video, like graphics on social media. If someone can just click on the podcast and listen to the sound of my voice, it doesn't matter what I look like. It doesn't matter what my weight is. It doesn't, none of that stuff matters. It matters that I am speaking something about something that they can then take and use and make a difference in their life. So there's just so much power behind it. But yeah, like really focusing on not just those arbitrary numbers, but focusing on the impact that you're making. And that allows you to really keep going. Because I know it can feel really overwhelming and frustrating. Like, I'm putting all this effort in and I'm having all these conversations, but is it actually making a difference? Look for those DMs, those connections that you make at networking events where they're like, I know you. I listen to your podcast. Oh my goodness, you are just like your show. Like, it creates that deeper connection. You don't have to prove yourself because they already know you.
Oh, Alesia, that is so beautiful. And I love that you brought up this whole, I call it just like plague, essentially, that I think the whole world is dealing with in the, especially a post COVID world of influencers and millions of followers and all of that on the, for those that are listening in the corporate executive world, right? And the women within my program, one thing we do is we help them start building out their personal brand, right? And that's just as simple as like posting on LinkedIn, right? To get that. And inevitably, once they start doing it, they'll be like, well, it only got, 1,200 impressions. And you brought up such a cool point because, especially those of us that are entrepreneurs, that grow online businesses, we do that all through social. The amazing thing is when you get that job, that call for that dream job in corporate, it was never someone that even liked your post. When you get that client, it's never even someone that you ever even knew was listening to that podcast. And it's amazing, like those are the folks that even if you're not hearing it, that's where your quote unquote ROI is coming from. But because we can't reach out there and see it, and we are such a society that needs instant gratification, I feel like that's why so many of us give up not only, in your world with it, the podcasting, the live events, but in everything in our life.
Yes, I 100% agree. There's, especially from the perspective of like getting a job, right? Or landing those type of connections. You're right. Most people are not going to be the ones who are liking that post or even commenting. It really, the reason you're putting that content out there is not for that like, not for that. It's to just, when someone goes back and checks you out, that you have that credibility, that you have that information there. Same with like getting your voice out there. I don't want to say guest blogging. That's like so 2010. But like getting on like digital magazines, putting your thought leadership out there, those are not to get those instant likes to, and yes, we want that, but long form content is not dead, guys. Like, this is so important that you have that established credibility, that when someone Googles you to check you out to see what it is that you're about, that they don't see that, post from when you were in college because you haven't had a social presence since then. You want them to see your thought leadership. You want them to see that you are a credible person, that you are someone who can show up. And that's not even just in the audio format, but also other ones. And you don't have to launch your own podcast, right, to show up that way. There are podcasts that your ideal, I don't want to say like boss, your ideal position that you want to go into, that boss is listening to, where you can show up and share your expertise and things that you're doing. It's not just for the entrepreneur at all.
Yeah, no, Alicia, and I love that you bring that up in the way that so many people have this allergic reaction to any form of audio visual online presence. And I always challenge that, and I'm sure this is something that you've challenged folks as well. Back in the day, like to get a new client as an entrepreneur or to get in your dream organization as a corporate executive, you legitimately had to get in your car. You had to drive to the after hour chambers event. You had to be amongst 40 people that everybody in that room just wants to talk to two people that are really in the room. You kind of had to wait your turn, almost like an assembly line, and then essentially pitch. And what you're doing for folks today is, wait a minute, you get to talk about something you're passionate about that can reach an unlimited amount of people. You can do that sitting in your jammies if you want, sitting at home. Tell me, what is actually more intimidating and what can you get a higher ROI on?
Yeah, and as an introvert, like I get it. Believe me, I don't want to go to those events. I don't want to show up at networking things. Like give me the small groups any day, every day. And that's the great thing about audio and like just you, one other person, that is it. Then it gets disseminated elsewhere. Like you don't have to put on an air or put on a show. And also like if you're someone who wants to speak on stage, speak at events, this is a great way to get started with that, to actually like nail down what it is that you want to talk about, to really like hone in on, okay, my keynote, this is what I want to talk about. Let me practice this a few times for free on a few different platforms, see what the questions are, really get clear on, all right, now I can tailor my message. I can get on that stage and it's just me and one other person. It's not me and a bunch of other people. Like, okay, I have to like really prove myself and I haven't practiced this at all. There's so much available to us if we want to show up as leaders, if we want to show up as an expert and be taken seriously, like, and it's not that hard to have a one-on-one conversation, to just get the ball rolling and like it's okay. Most people aren't going to listen to it, right? Like, unless that person has like a huge audience, you can practice on these smaller podcasts. You don't have to like share it with anyone. It could just be for you practicing. And then you build it up of like, hey, I've spoken on these things and I showed up as an expert. And here you go. Like, present that if you're someone who's like, look, I want to speak at more events. Perfect. There you go. Win win, guys.
Oh, I love that, Alicia. And I love that you made the point that, practicing and no one's going to hear it. Like, and that's what I see as a struggle with so much within, obviously the corporate executive side, but also entrepreneurs. And to be honest, even myself, like you believe that you're going to write this piece of content, you're going to write this keynote, you're going to map out this podcast. And then, like, if it sucks, the whole world's gonna know, and you're not gonna be able to leave your house, and you're gonna say something stupid. And I'm here, like, best someone, like, this is only, I think, maybe episode 39, episode 40. When I go back and I listen to episode 1 or 2 of my own podcast, someone that is the most extroverted person you'll ever meet. I love public speaking, like, I'm one of those weird people. I listen to it and I'm like, thank God that didn't get a lot of downloads. Like, and that's okay because it takes like, you're not going to come out of the gate being perfect. But the beauty of it is even since then, like continuing to perfect your craft, what people do really enjoy is the imperfect.
Yeah.
Is the, where's my notes? I don't remember where I am. Like, oh yeah, this person's not perfect and they may be like me. So therefore I may listen to them.
Yes, I share constantly on my show, and I have my team edit this out, but I do let people know, like at the beginning, when I have someone on, I'm like, look, pretty sure I'm undiagnosed ADD. I need to take a moment sometimes to like, where was I? Where were my thoughts going? How am I going to make sure that the story I have in my head relates to what we're actually talking about? There's a lot behind like trying to lead a conversation. And it makes my guests feel more comfortable. Like, look, we'll edit that stuff out. We'll make sure you sound nice and good. Like, we want to make sure we're producing something great. But I let people know, like, I keep it very real. Like, yes, we'll take a lot of that stuff out, but letting my listeners know, hey, this is what I have my team do because this is how I feel, just makes them feel like, oh my goodness, me too. Like, that happens to me all the time. And even my guests feel more comfortable because they know they can be themselves. And most of their stuff that are like side tangents or stories we'll keep in because it makes them more personable. It makes them way more relatable. So yeah, I love podcast medium as a place, but like it doesn't have to just be that. It could be alive. It could be if you're someone who likes to write, then write something. Like find a way to really get your message out there and not be afraid to be vulnerable, not be afraid to share that behind the scenes and the things that you did and like also own it. Like if you did something awesome, Own that, because your male counterparts are owning the most ridiculous things and still getting tons of finance. Like, oh wow, man, I just destroyed that company. Oops, here, let me go back and get more financing to like create a new one. They're doing that. Why can't we show up as imperfect and own that, but also show up as like, hey, I did this boss thing. Here, everyone needs to know about this. Like, own it.
Oh, Alicia, you just inspired me. I'm sitting here thinking of that, and that's something I remember I used to say all the time. If we owned our wins the way, as women, the way we own our screw ups, we would fucking rule the world at this point, right? I mean, because you think about like any little thing that you screw up, it's like a 3 day ordeal of like talking crap to ourselves most of the time. And you're right, like we legitimate, and we're seeing it even now, right? And in recent news, like here's these people legitimately bankrupting organizations or doing horrible things, and they're still have the confidence somehow to be like, oh yeah, I screwed up. Can I have some more money to try again?
Yeah.
And they're not, no one's telling them no. They're forking out more money. Like,
Yeah. And it's proven women run better businesses, their businesses make more money because we're very intentional, right?
yeah.
Because we do beat ourselves up for those mistakes. And I think that knowing that and knowing that, hey, we're not alone, right? Like all of us are making mistakes. I destroyed my website last week. Oh, it was gone. And I was like, all right, I got it. I can fix it. I know how to do this. All right, we're just going to fix it. It's fine. Company emails gone. Like literally everything kind of went to trash on Friday. And I was like, there's a lesson in here somewhere. I know it'll get through. Like, but I knew it. Hey, look, I'm just gonna have a glass of scotch and I'm gonna figure it out in the morning, and that's okay. Like, nothing. Not the world's not gonna implode because I made this mistake. It's gonna be fixed by Monday. The team's gonna be fine. Like, sometimes just sit back, take a breath, have a glass of scotch, and then fix it in the morning when you've had some like sleep to figure it out.
I love it. I love it. Our tip for today, everyone, there's nothing that a McAllen meat will not fix. So that is our
Exactly.
recommendation. McAllen better sponsor this from me saying that out loud too now. So, no, Alicia, as we start to wind down here and give everybody what they need, for those that keep feeling this calling, right? Their intuition is telling them, just tell your story. And they're right on the edge and they're peeking out over the edge and they're thinking it looks cool, but it also looks scary. What advice would you give them today?
I would actually say don't start a podcast, which I know seems counterintuitive, but hear me out. I would say go on other people's shows first. Guest somewhere, do some live things with someone you're really comfortable with that you can really be yourself with and like make mistakes and take sloppy action. Like do something like that is gonna get you nudged a little closer to that goal of like doing your own thing. But using those platforms, I think it's so underutilized by people. Really just do that to get more comfortable. So that way when you do have your own thing or you do have your own, column or whatever that you're like, hey, I'm showing up as the expert here, then you feel more confident. Don't just jump into that. Take those baby steps while it's still taking action, right? Like that's the main thing is that you're taking action toward that end goal and doing it in a way that feels good and also allows you to show up very confidently by the time you get to that end goal.
Alicia, I think that is probably the best advice that everyone should receive, regardless of what it is, because I think society tells us, and we believe sometimes these very patriarchal symptoms of society, that when you go for it, you have to go all in, do all the things all at once, and that's sometimes the worst thing that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And to retrain your brain to give your brain the wins is to make the stakes essentially lower. So who cares if you screw up on a guest, right? On a
Yeah.
smaller podcast. Chances are no one's ever going to hear it. Right? It's
Yeah.
okay. And so I love that you say that. Alicia, where can people go and that are ready to pull the trigger, that have done that, and they're ready to have someone incredible as your group turn their podcast into something so powerful? How can you help them?
Yeah, so if you go to galatimedia.com, you'll have all of the information there on how you can get started. We have resources and all that fun stuff. as well as my podcast listeners to lead. So if you're someone who's like maybe in the entrepreneur space or the bigger corporations and you're like, look, I know my company could benefit from this and I want to kind of show up as a leader in this organization, then that's a good place to go as well. And if you're on LinkedIn, like this is streaming live, come find me, send me a DM. I love chatting with people over there as well.
Alesia, so everyone, you heard her. Go to her website. The link will be in this, wherever you're watching on social media. Also will be in the show notes if you're listening to her on the PowHER House, where she can absolutely take that for those of you ready to take the next step. Alesia, any parting words of wisdom today?
No, just keep being a boss and like own all of you, right? Like own yourness. Either way, whether it's like, hey, I messed up, or hey, I had this awesome win, own all of it.
Own your nest. I love that. I love that. Everyone, thank you so much for hanging out with Alesia and I today. We would talk on here for hours, but for those of you that are coming across us, obviously go to where you listen to podcasts today. And that way you can get everything you need from both Alesia and I. Linked to both of the podcasts are there. Start subscribing, share with a friend that needs to hear this today, that is ready to start harnessing the power of their own story. And until next time, let's do the damn thing. Bye, Alesia.
Bye. Thank you.